Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Cherished Moments. We are talking about motherhood and grace and how grace shows up in motherhood for us. So I am joined by the Miss Charisse McGriff. She is an entrepreneur. She's in ministry. She loves God. She loves people. And what has her sitting in this seat today is she is a mom. Thank you for joining us, Charisse.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Please tell us about your family and tell us a little bit about your business ventures.
Of course. So, of course, like she said, my name is Charisse, and I have actually two businesses. One is CAJD Apparel and More, where we have boutique style accessories. But I also say, I always tell people that I sell confidence. I don't just sell jewelry. And the reason being is because when you wear my pieces, you will feel more confident about yourself and your journey in life and what you're doing. And then also, I have a coaching business for confidence coaching where I help you with fashion and style. Also work on the inner parts of you, what you're going through and different things so we get to a better version of you. So I do that as well. And so I am a wife of 10 years and I'm also a mother of 3 beautiful girls, ages 22, 16, and 12.
Woo!
Yes.
You got a lot going on, girl.
Yes.
So definitely God's grace is in the mix.
Yes, always. You always gotta add that in the mix.
When I thought about you, I thought about conversations we've had offline and about how we sometimes have to parent ourselves. Meaning,
yes,
we have mini-me's, we have children who are replicas. I mean,
yes,
we see the things, the good and the not so good, the challenging parts.
Yes.
And so I wanted to talk today about how do we parent and how does the grace of God show up when we are parenting ourselves? How does that look for you?
The first thing I would say is that you got to be willing to let the grace show up.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that, sometimes we all have our own ways of doing things, parenting and saying different things, but we have to allow God's grace to show up in the situation. I believe for me personally, just speaking, is that I had to allow God to give him the permission to shift things for me in my relationship with my kids, just with me growing up and getting into the position that I am in now. It took a lot of growing. It was some growing pains, right? But the grace of it is that God says that my grace is sufficient enough. And so because of that, he gave me what I needed to be able to have the capacity to move into what I'm doing now, right?
Yeah, so you said, give God permission, right? What does that look like?
It looks like surrendering, and a lot of people don't like that word, right? We don't like surrendering. Like, wait, what you mean?
Because I know to be honest.
Listen, but when you surrender your way for his will, then you're surrendering, you're just telling him that I give you free range to work in my life. And so what that looks like is that it's going to look messy because when you say God give you free range, you're thinking because it's God, it's going to be so beautiful. And that's where people make the mistake. Right? And so for me, with my relationship with my kids, I said, God, I want to be a better mother. I want to be more understanding. I want to be them to be able to come and talk to me about things that it may shock me, but I want to be able to understand, right? And so for me, I would say that my kids, now I'm in that place with my kids.
Nice.
Right. Before I wasn't.
So let's talk about the before.
Ooh,
because a lot of times we'll say this is where we are.
Yes.
Right? But what was the before? And then what's the before, but then what was also the trigger factor for knowing, okay, something has got to change?
Well, I think the first thing I will say is that I was a different person when I first had. So I had my first daughter. I was 20 years old when I had her. So totally different person, totally different ways, totally different attitude. I did a lot of, clubbing at that time, going out, doing different things, just not really fully paying attention to her and her needs as I should have, right? And the reason why I say that is because that now that I'm older, when I started, getting myself, together, as we say, right? I realized that I had left so many memories, so many moments, so many things. And it wasn't even just the going out, it was working too. I worked 3 jobs trying to take care of the family, trying to pay bills, because at that time I was a single parent. And, you know, just, I didn't have time to talk to her about how she was feeling. I didn't have time to, I was like, oh, you'll be okay. You'll be all right. I got to get this money. I got to pay these bills.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. And then what she told me is that hurt. That you chose your job over me.
That came in the after. Or that came in the moment.
That came like during
the process. So that was in the process.
In the process,
right?
And she was like, you know, you chose your job over me, and I still kept working because I was like, well, I understand your feelings, but I need to get this money right because it's a reality, right? You got bills, you got real stuff, and so what that looked like is it looked like neglect. You know, but I was also doing the things I was taught. You know, and a lot of times we don't even think about those things that we were taught as we were growing up. And not saying I had a bad childhood, but just saying that I was taught that you had to work in order to get nice things because nobody's going to give it to you. So you have to work and you have to do all these different things, and not knowing that if you do what God says, He will make up the rest. Right. So it's a whole mindset shift. You know, I worked 3 jobs. And I'm like, how does a person work that many jobs? And 2 of them were full-time jobs. And the other one was doing stuff on weekends, right? And so when you ask yourself those things, it's like, how do you have time for your kids? I really didn't have time.
So process for me is a concept that I like to talk about because it gets ugly in the process.
Yes.
And it gets heavy in the process where it's like, you know what, I'm good. You know, like this was not what I thought. Like it's not a straight line from A to B. You know, to get there, we have some obstacles, we have some barriers, we have all of that. So you're working to try to go through the process with your eldest, and you're like, this is what I want. Maybe you're gung-ho, and she's like, wait a minute. Skirt. You know, I'm not so gung-ho about it. How do you work through that with her to get over that barrier to get to the place of, okay, now we're able to have this fluid avenue of communication?
And this is what I would say, we're still working on that.
Okay.
And the reason why I would say, and I want to let the people know who listening that it's okay to be in that place. We have to realize that the damage was not done overnight, so the relationship is not going to mend overnight. And so we're in a better place than we were before, but we're still not where I know that God wants us to be, right? And so in that, I would say that we're continuing to embrace the fact that I know that she has her feelings, but I want, like I told her, you need to heal as well. And, you know, and how can I help you through that process? Being a person, you know, not neglecting that she was hurt, not neglecting that she felt a certain way or that her feelings are, you know, are not real, but just saying, hey, that's the past. I would love to help you get through this so we can get to the future, right? And I know a lot of families, especially if you know, live the type of life I lived at the time, you're dealing with some of that, you know, some of that stuff. And the other thing I would say is that you have to forgive yourself, right? So I had to forgive me for allowing all the things that I allowed, right? Because regardless of, you know, the fact I was in it. You know what I mean? And so sometimes we like to point fingers at the other person, and we like to say it was their fault. And not saying that that person did not have that part, they didn't hurt you or whatever the situation is, but I had a part, right? And my part was I neglected my kids because I was not present for their feelings. And so I had to get a harsh check on that because my impulse and I didn't neglect them. My personal feelings, I didn't neglect them, but yes, you did.
Do you think there is a freedom that comes with acknowledgement and ownership?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. There's a freedom that comes with that when you acknowledge that I'm not perfect and I messed up and you ask God, okay, God, how do I restore this? Because now I know I messed up. I see it. I see it clearly. I know I messed it up. Now show me how to fix it. Because I think that until you realize that you messed up something, how can you fully heal and how can you fully ask God to come in and fix it?
That's it. Because if we're going to have a barrier up, there's blockage.
Yeah.
There's blockage. So we won't see progress with that up. And so could you speak to some mothers out there who may have a broken relationship with their daughters or even son, you know, because as a result of something, right? Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe it was just different perspectives or viewpoints or whatnot. So what would you say to a mom who's like, I'm ready to mend, I'm ready to heal, but my son or daughter, they're just not having it?
What I would say is the first thing is forgive yourself of all of the things that you think that should have happened. And then what I did was, and this is something I tell, when I'm coaching people as well, I tell them to write themselves. I call it a destiny letter. So you write a letter to yourself, and you forgive yourself in this letter for everything that you think that you've done possibly, or anything that you can think of. You write it in this letter, and you're basically saying, like, I'll say for me, for instance, I should forgive myself for being in a domestic violence relationship, for allowing myself to go through that. I forgive myself for not being present for my kids when they needed me. I think and then after I write that letter, ask God, I say, God, I'm asking for forgiveness. I'm asking that you give me, create me a new heart, give me something new to work with, and I'll burn it. Because now it's done, right? So no matter how many times it comes up, I already know it's dead. No matter how many times it may look like it's going to come up in a future relationship, it's dead, right? So even if my daughter brings something up from the past, I know it's dead. Because I've already prayed about it, it's already done.
Right, it's
casted. It's casted. And so I already know that, but I know that her feelings are real. So I don't say, oh, that's dead. I just acknowledge her feelings, and I continue to pray because I know what I already did. Right. Yeah. And sometimes and this is the thing, it's not your job to worry about how long it takes for them to catch up. And I think that's the other thing.
We place our expectations on other people.
Yes.
And when we do that on our children, anybody, I think you create more frustration.
You do.
And more friction because now you're not hearing me.
Yeah.
Now you're not understanding, but I think when you acknowledge their feelings but not carrying their feelings, because we can be a codependent out of guilt.
Yes.
Then that becomes something completely unhealthy. So I think that is a wonderful balance. And I just want to acknowledge and congratulate you for making it out of a domestic violence situation.
Thank you.
If you're watching today, know that there is hope for you. We'll put some links in the comments or the bio, wherever we're going to put that information. Can you speak to that just briefly about coming out of a domestic violence situation?
So what I will say about coming out of that relationship is this. I didn't know who I was. Like, I lost all of the purpose that I felt that God gave me was lost in that relationship, right? Because one thing about domestic violence is that the goal is to make you just dependent on them. So you're totally dependent on them. You're looking for them to give you the satisfaction that you need, and you're not looking to God for anything because this person makes you feel like they're the only person that can do it, right? And so what I will say is that they're not the only person. God is there. He was there with me while I was going through that. But one thing about God is not going to force his way in. You have to allow him in. So a lot of people feel like, well, that shouldn't have happened to you if God was there. No, I didn't allow him into the situation. And so when I started allowing God to mend me, I wasn't even able to, like, at one time to look in the mirror. Didn't even know if I liked myself. Would look at myself and be like, oh, you're so ugly. You're not beautiful. You're not pretty. You're not any of those things. Why would anybody want you? Type things. And I know it's somebody out there who's listening who has been there either going through that right now. What I would say to you is that you are beautiful. You are worthy. You are who God told you would be. And it's only going to take for you to realize that you just need to enter, just open the door a little bit and let God enter in.
That's awesome. So we're here today, right? How does the grace of God show up for you today in your motherhood?
Oh my God. He shows up in so many different ways. And the reason why I say that is because, like, my daughters, because of the example that God has allowed me to set over this time, now they wake up with worship music. They serve at church. They do different things. So God's grace is allowing me to see the miracles that I prayed for come to pass. That's his grace.
Listen, there's nothing else to really say after that.
That's his grace.
That's his grace. So thank you so much, Charisse, for joining me. Such a powerful time and testimony. Please be on the lookout because you will have a conference coming up and just all these things. I've had conversations with Charisse where she's encouraging me. She's reminding me, hey, we don't talk like that.
Yes.
And so
yes.
I really appreciate you for that. And thank you for coming on Cherished Moments.
You're welcome. Welcome.
Bring it in.